Bradford, West Yorkshire, a city defined by hard work, community spirit and resilience. Terraced homes line the hills, children hurry to school, and the scent of fresh bread drifts from corner bakeries. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, or thinks they do. But beneath that familiar rhythm, in one quiet neighbourhood, a secret was taking shape. In late 2024, a family from Bradford would become the focus of one of Britain's most shocking drug trafficking cases, and at the centre of it all, her mother. Her name was Farzana Kawsa, a 54-year-old woman who, to her neighbours, seemed nothing short of ordinary. She was polite, modest and soft-spoken. She smiled when passing by, offered food during Ramadan, and was known for keeping her home spotless. But behind that calm exterior, Farzana was running a tightly coordinated cocaine smuggling network, using her own children as couriers. The plan was unlike anything investigators had seen. It was quiet, controlled, hidden in plain sight. Farzana's network was built on trust, family loyalty, and one of Britain's busiest airports, Birmingham Airport. The system she designed was simple but brilliant in its deception. Her contacts in Cancun, Mexico, arranged for unaccompanied suitcases filled with high-purity cocaine to be placed on flights bound for Birmingham. The bags were labelled and disguised as lost or misrouted luggage. At the same time, Farzana would send her family members on short-haul trips to nearby European cities like Amsterdam, Dublin and Brussels. They carried no luggage when leaving the UK, but their return flights were carefully timed to arrive minutes before or after the Cancun flights. Once in Birmingham, they moved casually through arrivals and collected the pre-marked suitcases from the Cancun baggage carousel. They looked like any other family returning from a trip. They smiled at border officers, wheeled their bags through customs and vanished into the crowd. No guns, no threats, just confidence and timing. To neighbours in Bradford, the Kawsa family seemed ordinary. A mother, her grown children and a few close friends. But behind the scenes, Farzana had created a structure that blurred the line between affection and manipulation. Her eldest son, Junaid Shafak, 33, handled logistics. Mohammed Amir, 28, took care of finances. Umair, 22, ran errands and travelled most often. Her youngest, Safa Noor, just 19, played a smaller role, but even she became part of the machine. Outside the immediate family were Sarah Hussein, a friend who occasionally helped with bookings, and Khalid Abdulkawi, a courier with links to international traffickers. Together they formed a smuggling network that appeared invisible because it looked like love. The first few runs were flawless. The suitcases came through customs untouched. The drugs were passed on to distributors. Payments arrived, discreetly spread across multiple accounts. With each success, Farzana's confidence grew. She didn't travel herself. She didn't need to. From her home in Bradford, she tracked flights, checked exchange rates, and messaged instructions using coded phrases. Her power came from control, the quiet assurance that her family would obey her. But every operation leaves a trace, and soon that trace led to suspicion. Airports, especially major hubs like Birmingham, operate on patterns. When those patterns repeat too perfectly, someone notices. In October 2024, a border force analyst flagged a pattern of short-haul travellers returning from Europe with checked luggage, despite having departed with none. Most arrived around the same time as Cancun flights. The same surnames kept appearing. The data was passed to the National Crime Agency (NCA). Within days, a covert task force was formed, Operation Dune. Investigators began by pulling passenger records, comparing timestamps and reviewing CCTV footage. Slowly a picture emerged. The same group of travellers, young, well-dressed, calm, appeared repeatedly near Cancun baggage carousels, even when their flights originated elsewhere. Next came financial tracking. The team mapped bank accounts linked to the suspects and found unusual cash deposits, consistent, structured, and far beyond normal earnings. By early November, the NCA had enough to act. Surveillance teams followed the family across Bradford, noting car movements, deliveries, and late-night meetings. Their operation was careful, almost routine. But the routine was exactly what gave them away. A breakthrough came when analysts discovered that two of Farzana's sons and her daughter had booked flights from Amsterdam to Birmingham for the 11th of November 2024. At the same time, records showed a flight from Cancun scheduled to land within an hour. The pattern matched perfectly. The NCA prepared for the sting. It was a cold, grey morning at Birmingham Airport. Travellers streamed through arrivals, dragging suitcases and scrolling through phones. Among them, the Kawsa couriers walked with calm precision. They cleared passport control, moved toward baggage claim, and waited at the Cancun carousel. 6 unclaimed black suitcases circled lazily on the belt. The family approached, lifted them one by one, and stacked them neatly on trolleys. They looked ordinary, a mother's children returning from holiday. But as they crossed the line toward customs, plainclothes NCA officers closed in. The arrests were silent but swift. 6 people detained, 6 bags seized. Inside, 180 kilograms of high-purity cocaine with an estimated street value approaching £5 million. At the same time, officers raided Farzana's home in Bradford. They found phones, flight receipts, and notes written in code, evidence tying her directly to every step of the operation. Within hours, the family's quiet secret collapsed. 7 suspects were charged: Farzana Kauza, her children Junaid, Mohammed, Umair, and Safa, along with Sarah Hussein and Khaled Abdul Qawi. The NCA's statement called it a highly organised, family-run conspiracy that exploited trust and routine. The investigation had lasted 3 months, from the first flagged pattern to the final arrest. What made the case so shocking wasn't just the scale of the drugs or the sophistication of the method. It was who had done it, a mother and her children working together. News of the arrest spread quickly across Bradford. Neighbours described the Kauzas as quiet and friendly. No one had suspected a thing. The shock ran deep, not just because of the crime, but because it felt like a betrayal of community. In the weeks that followed, investigators pieced together the full picture. The Cancun flights were traced back to suppliers linked with organised traffickers in Mexico. Communications between Farzana's phone and foreign contacts confirmed coordination of deliveries. The evidence was overwhelming. By December 2024, the family's assets were frozen. Their story, a mix of greed, trust, and tragedy, was just beginning to unfold in public view. When the case finally reached Birmingham Crown Court in July 2025, the story of the Bradford family had already made national headlines. But inside the courtroom, it felt less like a spectacle and more like a tragedy unfolding in slow motion. The defendants sat quietly in the dock, a mother and her children, the faces once hidden behind drawn curtains and a respectable facade. On the opposite side, the prosecution prepared to reveal how one woman had turned her family into a drug trafficking network. The prosecution began by detailing the structure of the operation. They showed how Farzana Kauza had used legitimate travel routes to disguise illegal cargo. The jury watched CCTV footage of her children collecting suitcases from Birmingham Airport, their movements calm and practiced. They listened to investigators describe how the family had booked multiple short-haul flights over a 3-month period, always aligning with incoming Cancun flights. Evidence after evidence built the same pattern. Airline records matched customs data. Luggage tags matched the seized suitcases. Coded messages found on Farzana's phone aligned perfectly with each smuggling attempt. One of those messages read, "Same colour as before." "Wait near 6, another said, "Take them all. Don't delay." The prosecution explained that 6 referred to Carousel 6, where the Cancun luggage arrived. Forensic analysis confirmed that the cocaine found in the 6 suitcases was of exceptionally high purity, more than 80%. It was professionally packaged, vacuum sealed, and covered with multiple layers to hide its scent. As the evidence played out, the atmosphere in the courtroom grew heavier. There were no dramatic outbursts, no shouting or tears, just silence. Farzana sat expressionless, hands folded, as investigators described every detail of her plan. The prosecution described her as the matriarch and mastermind, a woman who had turned trust into control. They said she had weaponized family loyalty to run a criminal enterprise that could have poured millions of pounds worth of cocaine into the UK. The defence offered a different story. They said Farzana had been manipulated by traffickers abroad, pressured by debts and threats. They argued her children were victims of influence, following orders without understanding the full extent of what they were doing. But the facts told a clearer story. Every family member had travelled independently. Each had handled the luggage. The pattern of repetition showed organisation, not confusion. The money transfers showed reward, not coercion. As the trial continued, investigators gave testimony about how Operation Dune had unfolded. One officer described the moment they realised the Cancun and Amsterdam flights were connected, a discovery that broke open the case. Another spoke about the early morning of November 11th, when surveillance teams positioned themselves throughout Birmingham Airport, waiting for the suspects to arrive. He said, "They looked so calm, like a family coming home from holiday. You'd never think they were walking out with millions in cocaine." When the footage of that day was played in court, it was surreal. The defendants, who once moved so confidently through the airport, now watched their own downfall on screen. The same bags, the same faces, the same quiet precision, now evidence against them. After nearly 4 weeks of testimony, the jury withdrew to deliberate. They returned 2 days later with unanimous verdicts, guilty on all major counts. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver sentencing. He began by addressing Farzana directly. "You led a conspiracy of striking sophistication," he said. "You involved those closest to you, exploiting their trust and their love. That is a betrayal few can comprehend. You knew the risks, yet you used your family as instruments of crime." He turned to her children and said, "You may claim loyalty as your reason, but loyalty does not excuse criminality. Each of you made a choice, and those choices carry consequences." Then came the sentences. Farzana Kauza, 13 years and 4 months. Junaid Shafak, 10 years and 9 months. Mohammed Amir Shafak, 8 years and 9 months. Umair Mohammed, 8 years and 1 month. Safa Noor, 7 years and 2 months. Khaled Abdul Kawi, 10 years and 9 months. Sarah Hussein, 2 years, suspended. The total, more than 60 years of imprisonment across the group. Farzana showed no visible reaction as her sentence was read. Her children remained silent. For a few seconds after the judge finished, no one moved. Then the guards led them away one by one. Outside the courthouse, NCA spokesperson Paul Boniface spoke to reporters. "This was not an impulsive crime," he said. "It was planned, rehearsed, and coordinated across international borders. The fact that it was led by a mother using her own children makes it deeply disturbing, but it also shows that crime can exist behind any front door." His words echoed across the headlines the next day. Newspapers called it the Bradford family cartel. TV commentators dissected the story, the method, the psychology, the deception. But for Bradford itself, the reaction was quieter. Neighbours avoided the house on the corner where the Kauzas had lived. The home was shuttered, its curtains drawn tight. Conversations stopped when her name came up. The story had become a wound, a reminder that crime can hide in plain sight. Meanwhile, in law enforcement circles, Operation Dune was hailed as a landmark case. It led to sweeping changes in how airports monitored passenger behaviour and unaccompanied baggage. Algorithms were rewritten to identify travellers who repeatedly aligned with long-haul flights from high-risk regions. Cooperation between Border Force and the NCA deepened, creating a more dynamic system of data sharing. For the investigators who worked the case, the sense of victory was mixed with unease. Many described it as a win that felt like a loss. The drugs had been stopped, the traffickers jailed, but the image of a mother orchestrating her children's downfall lingered. Farzana's methods later became a topic of study in criminology programs. Professors used her case to illustrate how manipulation can occur within families, how love, loyalty and fear can merge into obedience. Her leadership wasn't built on threats, but on expectation. Her children followed her not because they feared her, but because they trusted her. That was what made the case so haunting. The cocaine seized that day, 180 kilograms, was one of the largest airport recoveries of the year. Its wholesale value was officially placed at around £5 million. But beyond the numbers was the ripple effect. Lives ruined, reputations shattered, and a community left questioning how such a scheme could have taken root among them. In time, the story faded from the front pages. Other cases took its place. But within law enforcement, the Bradford case became shorthand for quiet criminality, the kind that hides behind normal life. Inside prison, Farzana remained distant. She declined interviews, kept mostly to herself, and rarely spoke about the case. Her children served their sentences separately. The family that once moved in perfect coordination now lived in isolation, connected only by occasional letters filtered through the prison system. For Bradford, the memory remains sharp. The quiet street where the Kauzas lived stands unchanged, but for many it will never look the same. The story of Farzana Kauza is not just about drugs or money, it's about trust, and how easily it can be turned into control. It's about the thin line between protection and manipulation, between family love and criminal loyalty. She believed she could outsmart the system, that a family could succeed where others failed because no one would suspect them. For a while she was right, but every pattern, no matter how careful, eventually leaves a mark. In the end, it wasn't violence or betrayal that brought her down. It was data, patterns, numbers on a screen that told investigators where to look. Technology exposed what secrecy had hidden. The story of the Bradford family reminds us that the face of organised crime has changed. It doesn't always wear masks or carry guns. Sometimes it smiles across the dinner table. Sometimes it calls you mum. Between August and November 2024, a mother turned her family into a smuggling ring. On November 11th, the NCA ended it. By July 2025, justice was served. A family destroyed. A city stunned. A lesson written in quiet betrayal. Because in the end, crime doesn't always live in the shadows. Sometimes it hides in the light, behind love, behind family, behind the illusion of normal life. And for those who think they can outsmart the system, the Bradford case stands as a warning. The walls always close in. If you believe true stories like this deserve to be told, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so you never miss the next story that reveals the truth behind the world's quietest crimes.